The very first thing to cover in the sidebar is the patient selector. This is a very important section and will affect how MacPractice will behave in different abilities. When you have selected one patient, anything new that you do or create will automatically be associated to that patient. The selected patient's name and account number will be displayed at the very top of the window. To deselect the patient, simply click the X to the left of the patient's name. If no patient is selected and you create a new item, like an appointment or a note, you'll be asked to select a patient to associate it to. The sidebar contains the records within the ability you have selected. Since I'm in the Patients ability, you can see that I have a list of patients in the sidebar under a bold header called Patients with a folder icon. This bold header is called a node. Each ability will have various different nodes within it. If a node has an item under it, you will see a little triangle appear next to the node when you click on it. Clicking on the triangle will either hide or display the records contained within that node. This is called expanding or collapsing the node. For example, in the References ability, there are many different nodes. The folder icon on the reference nodes is green with an R, identifying these as references. You may see the same green folder icon in other abilities as the references affect many areas of the software. Since this ability contains all of our non-patient information, there are many nodes, each with several items within them. To navigate this ability quicker, you may wish to collapse one node before you open another. Not every node contains a record within it. If you ever click on a node and don't see the triangle, then that means the node does not contain a record or only contains one. For example, if I go back to the Patients ability, you will see a Find node. Clicking this node reveals no triangle, so this node performs an action instead. It allows me to search for patients. I can use the Detail area to enter my search criteria. For example, I want to search for patients by their first name and last name. I can then either hit the Return key on the keyboard or click the search icon in the toolbar to search for matching patients. MacPractice has now narrowed down my list in the sidebar of all patients that match my search criteria. If I want to go back to the entire patients list, I can simply click the Reload button. The sidebar is more than just a list of records, though. You'll notice that the sidebar has a scroll bar at the bottom. This means that there's more information that we can get by scrolling to the right or left. You'll notice there are other columns here that are displaying additional information about the patient. We can see what each column represents by looking at the column header at the top. You'll also notice that the patient column has a triangle on it. This means that this is the list currently being sorted by. If you want to sort by patient account number instead, you can simply click on the column header to sort by that column. You can click on the column header again to sort in the opposite direction. You can also change the size of the columns by dragging the edge of the column. You will notice that the mouse cursor will change as I do this. You can reorder the columns by clicking and dragging the column name. These actions of resorting, resizing, and reordering columns is universal throughout the MacPractice software. If there is an area where these do not work as expected, MacPractice simply might not let us change this setting for one reason or another. For example, here in the Patients ability, I cannot change the position of the Patients column. It is locked in place. This is so that I always know that the first column I see in the sidebar is my patient name to avoid any confusion with the guarantor names. You can also make the sidebar larger so that there is more room to view this displayed information. Simply hover your mouse over the edge of the sidebar and your mouse cursor will change just like it did when we were resizing the columns. You can then drag to the left and right to change the size of that sidebar. Right above the sidebar, you will see a search bar. This is usually referred to as a sidebar search because it allows us to search for records within the sidebar. Simply type any criteria in the search bar and press the return key on the keyboard to perform a quick search. Sidebar searching searches all of the columns within the sidebar. So in the patient's ability, it will search by patient name, patient account number, and guarantor names. You will notice that my search for Smith brought up patients that do not have the letters SMITH in their name. However, their guarantors do. Sidebar searching will also be affected by what node you have selected, depending on the ability you are in. The patient's ability will always search our patients, but if I go to the references ability and want to search for a specific insurance company, I should make sure the insurance company's node is selected. If I have the wrong node selected when I search, MacPractice may not find what you are looking for. Click the X in the search bar or click the Reload button to reset your list. Right above the sidebar search, you will see a pop-up menu with a bunch of color labels inside. These sidebar color labels allow you to color code items in your sidebar. To colorize an item, make sure it is selected and pick a label from the pop-up menu. You may have to deselect the item to see the color. You can also assign names to each of these color labels in the Preferences window under Labels. The labels will be the same for all users and all abilities, so be sure it is something universal. You can use the colors for anything, such as red for a bankrupt account, or green for cash pay patients, or blue for Blue Cross Blue Shield, and so on. The last item I want to talk about in the sidebar is the plus and minus button. You will see the plus and minus in many areas of the software, and they always perform the same action. They let us add and remove records from the database. The ones in the sidebar allow us to add items into the sidebar nodes. So if I'm in Patients, the plus button will add a new patient. If I'm in References and select any node, the plus button will add a new item under that node. Clicking the minus button allows me to remove that item, provided it's not being used somewhere else in the database.